Blessings. That was a video footage done, I would have to say at least 17 years ago, possibly 20 years ago, 18 years ago, when I just moved back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was teaching at Point Park University in the dance department. And my computer went dead 2 months ago. Major outage, had some issues in the house. And as I was cleaning to upgrade a new computer, I found that footage. And I don't think that was a coincidence because I've been wanting to do a talk on one of the most favorite chapters in this book that people loved. It was the chapter of me talking about how I met the tap masters back in the 1990s in New York City in the clubs. And I'm going to talk about that chapter, read little sections of it today to you, and really teach you about, looking back 25 years ago and having gone through life. I have to say that those tap masters in those clubs taught me so much about respect, work ethic, how you show up, how to be professional. And then they taught me about spirituality. I'm going to go into depth about these men, and I'm in the transition in my life and my career. You could probably see a little bit of that online. And I'm not really sure where God's taking me, but I do know that I'm surrendering to something much higher than myself. And when I moved to New York City, after I had a scholarship at Point Park University, I was blessed in Pittsburgh to work as a union performer. I worked with some of the best dancers on Broadway and some of the best company dancers before I even entered New York City. And it was one of those dreams. I went to New York City with a suitcase and $200 in my pocket, close to having a union card and wanting to be on Broadway. I think also I moved to New York City I never planned on coming back to Pittsburgh because of the severity of my childhood abuse. I was extremely broken and had a ton of brain damage that I was unaware of and running in circles. And I will say that being a creative person, and I was very blessed with some of the work projects that I was given in show business in New York City. And my last job before I left New York City, I was given the opportunity to do a one-woman show right off of the main Broadway shows in a window. And it was one of the coolest experiences because at that point in my career, I was starting to see corporations kind of take over Broadway. It was becoming more about names and not so much about art. The artists were really in the East Village doing the work. And so this was an incredible opportunity. And my poetry was exposed. And I would tap dance for 15 minutes throughout the day. And I was called a blues tap dancer, which was the greatest compliment because at that point, at the end of my career, I was able to have my own authentic voice within the shoes, and I was able to express all emotions because they're all important. That would be the beginning stages of my trauma work once I went back to Pittsburgh and my body started to shut down. I started to lose my ability to even walk. And that started on me a whole new path to clear out the voice for the next chapter that I'm entering now, which is about speaking and singing using my voice. So with that said, where do I want to go with this? Oh, so going back and moving to New York City, I was driven to work. I was driven to prove myself. I was tough. I had this exterior, and you can see it in that video, the shadow masculine side and the plastic water bottle, because I was a sugar addict, drinking plastic water, thinking I'm eating well, but not. And having later to have those consequences of how that affects my body. And then that's how I became sort of really skilled as a health coach outside the box. I mean, I'm going to be 52 in another month, and I definitely don't feel it. I just, knock on wood, have I did a workout yesterday, and my body is in better physical shape than it was when I was a professional dancer. And that's because of all the trauma release body work, which took a long time, and because I had a lot of it, a lot of crying, a lot of writing, a lot of coaching, uh, a lot of drinking very specific electrolytes reduced waters, a lot of superfoods and detoxing parasites. That's the whole package that when somebody hires me, if they want all those layers, that comes to the table. So for me, yeah, it was interesting because I lived right beside this French jazz club where the tap masters, Jimmy Slide, hosted an event every month. Now, I had watched these masters. I wasn't big into watching television growing up. I was usually spending a lot of time in the basement, which was my dance studio, my creative studio. And it was also a really safe place for me because my mom didn't really go down there much. So I was always kind of hiding and trying to stay away from her because she was really, our relationship was very much like a slave consciousness, unfortunately. So she severely physically violated me, but she also psychologically violated me. So I never felt like I was really in a safe home. And I didn't speak at all I didn't speak hardly at all in my house. It was like no. And so therefore, there was no input output experiences for me to have. And that definitely affected my personal relationships, attracting people in that really weren't interested in having a two-way conversation or give and take. It was just like sort of me helping people or me teaching people or me guiding people. And it was like a one-way street. And so that's a whole lot of rewiring as well. So yeah, so I would walk doing my thing out the door, and one day I just happened to see the sign of Jimmy Slide, and I stood there is this for real? Because I always wanted to see them. I never thought I would tap dance with them, but I was just captivated by their musicality and their skill set. I was kind of trained to do the but I really, because of all the pain and suffering I had endured growing up, my soul was crying and it had something to say, and tap dance became sort of my first voice. And so the night that I chose to go that night, actually I'll just kind of tell the story without reading the notes in my book. It was kind of like, in the movies, the bar in the front, the back room, everybody's sitting there, a jazz band. And, this was the 90s. So I was really one of the only white women in the club. And that was an interesting observation. It was just kind of like, okay. And Jimmy Slide was the host. And when he got on stage, I mean, now with all the healing arts information I have, he had the most incredible aura. There was something just magical around him, as well as his incredible skill set. When he smiled, there was almost a healing, actually, I think, happening in the room. And back then, which I really feel sad for this young generation because they're exposed to so much drugs and alcohol. But back then, people really weren't drinking a lot, not in the tap clubs. It was all about the art. It was all about taking in the energy of these masters. And it was about engaging and appreciating that to the highest value. The tap masters always came wearing suits, you know, and there was this energy of pride and respect that they gave each other. So I remember sitting in the back, just absolutely captivated by the skill set and energy of each tap dancer that came up on stage. I think it was like 4 or 5 hours. And then I have some tea right now. I love tea. And then as the club was closing and as I was walking out, Jimmy Slide stopped me and he introduced himself. And I immediately said, as I pulled out my hand, "It's an honor to meet you." And he shook my hand, which I think was an activation. And he looked me right in the eyes and he says, "It's an honor to meet you." And he says, "Are you a tap dancer?" And I just shyly like put my head down and I was like, sort of, yeah. And he was like, "Well, I want you to bring your shoes next month." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I walked out and I was literally next door, my apartment. I walked up the stairs, went into the apartment, and I cried. I didn't write that in my book. I cried. And I think looking back now, my soul remembered him. My soul remembered him from the past life. There was a soul database in activation. And I also really wanted to do and have the skills that they had. And I knew I didn't have it. Like, I have to say, reflecting, because I've done so much psychology and reflecting in the last year, because I've never given myself credit for things because I grew up with parents that had some severe issues and were using me for different reasons, but it was never to develop me. So I remember, though, I grew up doing dance competitions because my mom was a severe narcissist and it's like the dance winning awards was like sort of keeping myself out of danger, right? It was like sort of feeding her ego and helping, all the newspaper articles, "Is my daughter great?" That type of thing. And I enjoyed competing, not necessarily to beat somebody, but for the idea of creativity and expressing myself. So by the time I was 13, I started choreographing and creating my own material, both in jazz, ballet, and tap. And so I really loved that. But one of the things that I'm very proud of looking back, because competitions in the United States changed over the years, and I talk about that as well in my book. Having been a judge in the United States and then having been a judge in Canada, it was a very different experience for me. I remember always getting the judge's notes, and I'd actually be excited about it because I would look at what criticism they had, and then I would correct that. And now I look at that skill set and I think it's really allowed me to become an expert in trauma. I wasn't just settling to learn one Eastern science. Like, I've spent 10,000 hours on water and water testing and what's pH and what's ORP and da da da. And then once you master that, I mastered the next science. And I think it's kind of hard for people to realize how much I've mastered, which is really, once you master one thing, which I mastered being a tap master, it took 10 years. Then you have a skill set to master another thing. And then the next thing becomes easier. And so, really, that rooted in my own soul database. Nobody told me to look at the competition notes and to really critique them and want to become better. And I think that says something about also like the work environments. For me, being an independent contractor, as a coach, it's great. But working with other products and other teams, it's been challenging because you're not everybody's on that same page of growth and self-development. And that's I think I'm not used to that because at least in show business, when you're putting on shows, every artist is looking to become better and to work. That's the beauty of working with singers and dancers and a choreographer and a director. It can be such an amazing experience. And I've had some of the most amazing experiences of my life with these unique opportunities. And so within the tap dancing club, so I end up going to the Lincoln Library and I end up researching tap masters to just study their steps and their formulas before the next month because I wasn't going to just go on stage and like, you know, I had to be prepared a little bit. I had a lot of years of training to do, but still. And that's when I found Peg Leg Bates, which was a really amazing story. He was the first African American on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he literally had one leg and a peg, and he was phenomenal. Really inspiring story. So I go back to the club. I have my tap shoes in my purse, and I'm thinking, there's no way he's going to remember me, and that's okay. I can just sit here and enjoy everybody. Jimmy Slide does his thing. And then all of a sudden, it's a couple tap dancers in. He looks around the room and he says, "We have a special person here tonight." And I'm thinking, who? And then the lights come at me and he introduces me. And I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, "What?" So I grab my shoes, I put them on, I jump on stage. I'd never worked with a jazz band. Oh my God. And so I ended up tapping to It Don't Mean a Thing because it was fast and I was a fast tap dancer and I could turn a lot. And I knew at least that would impress people. And so it did. And that began my journey tap dancing with the masters. Of course, I came back every month. I started to train with other masters. I started to work in the hoofing world. And I was broken, so I didn't talk much. I was pretty shy around them. I felt extremely humbled that they would welcome me into their tribe because I was pretty lost. And it was a male dominated tribe, and they didn't hit on me. I got hit on a lot. And there was some shady stuff in show business that I had to walk away from. I had to walk away from several jobs. And I honestly felt like there was certain types of populations that were only interested in my looks and not my talent. And these men, I think it's spiritual. And I think that if I had not had a few years of experience of that, I would never know what it looks like or feels like. Because really, the rest of my chapters in my late 20s, 30s, 40s till now of different tribes has been a lot of disrespect and of the feminine, and looking at me as, a pretty girl, and they that's why, 30 years later, I can cry and say, like, whatever field you're in, if you're in construction, if you're in the medical field, whatever field you're in, if you give your employees or the people around you respect and integrity, and you treat them the way you want to be treated, and you work with them because you really want to grow, and you be accountable and hold up your own weight, you have no idea the impact you can have on somebody. You know, you have no idea. And so for me, there was a lot. about those couple years that I didn't know until now, to really reflect back and go, that was one part of my life where there weren't these patterns. And I gotta be honest with you, when a lot of them passed away because they were in their 70s and 80s, they were a little bit like having grandfathers around, except for Gregory Hines, and Gregory Hines died at 57. And that was a funeral that really was hard. I think when the tribe died, it was like, that's when I was looking for another tribe, and I haven't really found one since. And I'm okay with that. I hope I can find another one for one more chapter in my life, but at least I had that time that was magical. They brought out the best in me. They challenged me. They gave me job opportunities, not because they wanted something from me, but because I don't know why they did that. I don't know. But what I do know what it feels like to be with professionals in a room that all had the same vision. And it's interesting when I studied, because I had so many defenses up from my upbringing was so bad. And I was so hidden and locked away. Nobody knew my upbringing was bad. I mean, maybe they knew because I had so much anger and I had so much going on in my tap skills, and they had to see and hear some of that, right? That tribal connection. But I would watch these guys off stage as well, before a show, after a show, and they were family. They would refer jobs to each other when they were overbooked, and they were very competitive on stage. I mean, they wanted to be the best on stage, but it didn't go off stage. There was a deep love, a very deep love. And so, looking back, being sort of one of the only white women at the time, I started to venture on my own when they passed away, doing some alternative tap dancing stuff with different choreographers while I was still performing in other venues. And then obviously I was starting to train in yoga and Pilates, and it was personal training. And yeah, there was a lot of inner experience I had being around them. I felt safe with them too. And so these are qualities that we're always looking for in whatever field we're in. We were all probably struggling with a lot of personal issues, but when we showed up at the club, it was really about the performance and the entertainment for the people that were showing up there to be entertained. And it's magical because as I learned rhythms and formulas and patterns and how to work with a jazz band, that opened up my listening skills. You have to work off of a jazz band improvisation, which is really deeply intuitive and channeling, and probably prepared me for my intuitiveness and being able to pick sciences that would help me heal my trauma in the next chapter of my life, because there was a lot of creativity in figuring out the formulas of PTSD brain protocol, and then going into OCD brain protocol and childhood trauma brain protocol, So, and even with the body work I've done in the last year, like even the last couple months, there is a language in my body a psychology of the shadow programming of my father's lineages and my mom's lineages that I'm breaking apart. I'm literally walking away from both lineages and their pasts, not just my past, but their pasts. A new day. And I'm sure if you found this video, you're that one person in the family system that is doing that as well, whether it's in the workplace and breaking down paradigms or in your personal family system. So I think that's all I want to share today. There'll be more tap videos. Trying to figure out how to share some of the physical stuff that I'm doing now to help people, especially the lower body, the calf, ankle, footwork for brain work really is important, and we're not doing that enough. So thank you so much for tuning in to my channel. I greatly appreciate it. I just wanted to share a little bit of myself. I know a lot of my videos lately have been on water education, very passionate about that. And tune in next time if you want to leave any comments or any suggestions of things you want to learn on my channel. Please share. I'm definitely open to hearing from you. So I appreciate your support, and I wish you a blessed day.